Climate science. It's, climate change is a complex issue, but the fundamentals of the science is pretty simple. The basic thing to understand is the greenhouse effect, which works just like a greenhouse does. Energy from the sun comes in, warms the earth, some of it escapes into space, most of it is trapped by the greenhouse layer, which as humans emit fossil fuels through burning coal, oil, gas, driving, transportation, industrial agriculture, this layer thickens and more energy from the sun is trapped and warms the earth and causes climate change. So the main impacts of climate change is going to be increased frequency and intensity of severe weather events. Things like heat waves, hurricanes, droughts, fires, flooding. These things are going to happen more often and they're going to be more intense when they do happen. So in Sackville especially, flooding is a really big concern. It's something we've already seen, and with sea level rise as a result of climate change and increased precipitation, we're going to see increased floods. And so in summary, relating to climate science, what the scientists are saying, the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is formed from climate scientists all over the world, the experts are saying that this is the greatest emergency humanity has ever faced. There's scientific consensus, which is sometimes a rare thing, but yeah, everyone is saying that it's humans, we're causing the problem, and it's big and it's urgent, and we need to address it right now. So where are we at right now? Most people are generally aware about climate change. This is a good thing, and I think this was a direct result of the climate strikes in 2019 and 2020. Most people have heard of climate change, they know somewhat what it is, but there still has not been any significant action. A few different people are doing things, but given the scale of the problem, there really has not been, nothing significant has been done. So that's what needs to change. And the first kind of concept that I'm going to talk about is intersectionality. And that's the idea that the climate emergency is connected with all other issues. So we kind of have a tendency to think about things in silos, especially in Western society. We think about everything in its own separate category, when really everything is interconnected. So the climate emergency is connected to biodiversity loss. When we cut down forests, when we fill in wetlands, we're contributing to biodiversity loss, and we're contributing to climate change because that's emitting greenhouse gases. The climate emergency is connected to racism. Environmental racism is a thing. The proximity of toxic industries is disproportionately located beside marginalized communities, indigenous communities, communities of color. These things are all interconnected. It's connected to our health, the impacts, heat waves, flooding, air pollution. These have negative effects on human health. So when we think about intersectionality, that means that not only are all the issues are connected, but the solutions are connected as well. So that can be a positive thing when we think about these issues. When we're thinking about climate action, we have to also be thinking about social justice and helping with all of these issues at once. So kind of along that theme, I'm going to talk briefly about climate justice and climate injustice. So what climate injustice means is that while climate change is going to impact everybody, it's not going to impact everybody equally, and unfortunately, it's marginalized groups who are going to suffer the worst impacts. And this is true on a global scale as well as a local scale. So globally, countries like Canada, the US, and European countries, we've emitted most of the greenhouse gases that are found in the atmosphere today. But we have, as wealthier nations, we have the resources to deal with the impacts of climate change. We can adapt much more easily than developing countries in the global south, who have done very little to contribute to this problem. So that's the global scale of injustice, and locally, there's injustice as well. Sackville already mentioned, flooding is a really big issue. We have a lot of homes that are on the floodplain, and wealthy people, maybe they can just move, pick up everything and move, but most people don't have kind of that privilege. So climate injustice is something to keep in mind. When we're thinking about solutions, we can't just have one demographic represented at the decision-making table. We need to hear from everyone, and that's kind of why another part of the reason why I wanted to have these sessions was to make sure that we're hearing from all members of our community and not just the people who are currently making decisions. And then I love this image that kind of visually represents what I was just talking about. Really, like, injustices in society, this is our reality. We have a profoundly unequal society. Some people have so much and others have so little. And then you hear a lot about equality. People talk about gender equality, racial equality, but really what equality is about is it's about giving everyone, treating everyone equally, giving everyone the same supports. And it doesn't take into account the fact that some people are starting from different places. So equity is good. Everyone in that image can watch the soccer game. They can all see over the fence because they're all given what they need. But ultimately, justice is ideally what we want to be striving for when we talk about social justice, when we talk about climate justice. We're talking about removing the fence entirely. So no one there needs any supports because there's no barrier. We've removed the systemic barrier to begin with. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about systemic change. So systemic change has kind of two components. There's dismantling the current systems, so the systems that are preventing us from stopping climate change. And then the second part is rebuilding in their place new systems that are just and sustainable. So change kind of exists along a spectrum, and on one end there's small scale incremental band-aid solutions and then that don't really get at the root cause of the problem. And then on the other end of the spectrum there's systemic change, which is really going all the way to the deepest part of the problem and addressing that. So then you get actually kind of transformational change that's going to be long lasting, and that's really what we want to be aiming for when it comes to issues as large and complex as climate change. We want to be thinking about change at the systemic level, and the iceberg model is a good tool for understanding that and visualizing that. If you've heard the expression, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's talking about the way that when you see an iceberg on the ocean, you're only seeing part, and there's really quite a lot deeper that you can go. So with this, you think about events, what just happened. Maybe there was some flooding that happened, patterns and trends. Maybe this flooding is happening more often. The underlying, beneath that, we have climate change that's causing increased frequency of flooding. And then the deepest level here on the iceberg model is mental models and kind of mindsets. So what is causing this issue at the deepest level? So yeah, just keeping this in mind, especially when we get to the imagining part, when you're thinking about what does a sustainable tangible look like, try to keep systemic change in mind. So I talked a little bit about justice with the images and everything, and now I'm going to talk about sustainability. So this is what I'm studying at university, and my first class in my first year was called What is Sustainability? So I spent a lot of time thinking about this question and thinking about this concept. And the definition that kind of resonates the most with me right now is meeting the needs of people within the boundaries of the planet. So sustainability kind of has these two dimensions, the social and the ecological. So it's really a concept that kind of recognizes the intersectionality of the world that we live in right now between human and ecological systems. So yeah, with these two components, sustainability is really a concept and kind of a framework that we can use to design sustainable lives and to design sustainable communities, which is what we're doing here today. And then this is another image that I really love. This is Kate Raworth's donut economic model, but I think it acts as a really good visual representation of sustainability. So if you look at like the green ring in the middle is the safe and just operating space for humanity. This is where we want to be. And on the inner ring of the circle, that's the social aspect of sustainability. So that's things like, these are all human basic needs: water, food, health, education, political voice, gender equality, housing, things like that. And right now in the world, there are a lot of people who those basic needs, they don't have them. So we have a social shortfall right now, and at the same time, we also have an ecological overshoot. So the outer part of this circle is the ecological ceiling. So that's right here, and right now we're overshooting that ceiling. We're seeing things like climate change, biodiversity loss, land use issues, air pollution. So the thing that we need to be striving for right now is lifting people out of this shortfall and reining in our impact that we're having on the natural world. So looking to the future, what can we do? If we look at it really simply, if we sort of simplify it, there's really two possible futures. It's like either we're doing something or we're not. And I didn't really talk much about kind of runaway climate change, but it's the idea that there are tipping points within the global climate system where if we go past a certain point, it's just because of feedback loops, like climate change is going to intensify on its own. So we really want to do as much as we can to prevent ourselves from hitting any of those tipping points. And this is just a book that outlines kind of the two possible futures and does a really good job of kind of presenting our options. So how do we get to that future where we've transformed our societies and where we've taken action? I think if you remember the iceberg model, the deepest level is mindset. So I've kind of identified 3 mindsets that I think we really need as many people as possible to have. And we need people to be engaged, we need a sense of urgency because there's a narrow window to act, and we need hope because as much as it's often framed as kind of an insurmountable challenge to overcome, I think that climate change can be also framed as an opportunity because of the intersectionality. If we are tackling climate change, we're also tackling social justice issues. We're also tackling healthcare, we're tackling housing, we're tackling all of these things at once because it's all interconnected. So where's the motivation going to come from to do all of this work? This book, Commanding Hope, which I love and everyone should read, talks a lot about hope and a vision for the future as our object for hope. So if we don't have something to work towards, we're just going to stay carrying on our current trajectory. And then this last book, From What Is to What If, Unleashing the Power of Imagination to Create the Future We Want, that was a really big inspiration for me for these sessions because he talks about how we're in a crisis of imagination right now. Our societies are designed in a way that we don't use our imagination anymore, but this is the time when we've never needed our imagination more. We have to imagine an alternative world for ourselves. We have to imagine an alternative way of living in this world, one that is sustainable and one that is just for everyone. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And yeah, so your task is to imagine what a sustainable Tantramar would look like. This is intended to be a really positive and fun activity, so there's no limits right now. You can be as creative as you want. You can think futuristic. Your ideas, there's no limits on them. We're not at a stage right now where we're trying to come up with kind of barriers or think like realistically about how it could be actually implemented. We just want to envision what would this community be like if it was truly designed in a sustainable way. So your ideas can be anything. It can be physical things, it can be inventions, it can be projects or mindsets or climate art, whatever you want. And we're gonna do it in sort of like a World Cafe model, which is where you'll have, some time in the groups that you're in now, and then after a bit of time has passed, we'll switch things up, and hopefully by the end of the night, you'll have had the chance to work with everyone, maybe get the chance to work with some people you've never met before, and hopefully that can kind of spark some creative ideas for everyone. So if you're having trouble kind of thinking at the start and coming up with ideas, we have a couple of prompts. You can think about who will be engaged and what our spaces will look like. We have a lot of amazing spaces in Tantramar and a lot of amazing people and resources that we can work with. We've got local businesses, NGOs, Mount A, we have the schools, we have the waterfowl park, and just try to imagine what will these places look like and what kind of skills from our community can we draw upon to transform them. And think about what it would feel like to live there, to walk down the street, talking with your neighbors, walking into local businesses, being at the market. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about any of the things that I've talked about so far?